Welcome to CMO's Off Script, where the conversations are as bold as our coffee and the insights as sharp as our wit. We're your hosts, Amanda, Bethany, Julia, Laura, and Nisha, 5 women with diverse perspectives on navigating the intricate world of healthcare marketing. Had enough of the same old marketing babble? Us too. We'll dive into one topic each week and serve up our unfiltered advice. Get ready for a fresh take on marketing. Welcome to CMO's Off Script. All right. I am thrilled to be with all of you today. We are going to tackle the elephant in the room. I think we all know the one. Marketers are frustrated, burned out, need a little support. We came across a really interesting article recently, a post on LinkedIn that I thought would be a great topic for us to spend some time talking about. Obviously, we all know that over the last several years, the healthcare industry has been faced and plagued with burnout, and healthcare workers in particular have been facing this, but it turns out we know that that's not limited to just healthcare. It's limited to pretty much every industry, and certainly health tech has been impacted by this, and marketers in particular are feeling this, combined with the financial impacts that are facing health systems. It's really made its way all the way down the food chain. So we're seeing it across the board. And that combined with some of the issues around churn that are impacting marketers in their roles, there's a lot going on, right? And we wanted to spend some time talking about the issues that are plaguing us. I mean, there's data out there about the turnover rates that we're seeing in marketing, which are typically higher than they are across other roles in the C-suite. The numbers vary, but you could look at Korn Ferry, Spencer Stewart. A lot of different studies are out there that are highlighting the churn rates that we're seeing within marketing. And I want to spend some time on the post that we saw recently and really talk about the specific issues that marketers are facing and not just admire the problem, but really also talk about what are the ways that we can tackle and address those things as, if you're an investor, if you're a CEO, if you're a C-suite leader, how can you support your marketing leaders and reframe the issues so that we've got an environment where marketing is successful, where we're not seeing that high rate of turnover, and we don't need to admire the problem, and we also don't have to see that rate of churn that we're currently facing in organizations all across our industry. So let's dig in. Let's talk about this recent LinkedIn post that we saw. Fellow CMO caught our attention. They're leaving the industry. They're peace out. I'm done.
Yeah, that was a wild post.
Right?
Yeah, no, it was super wild. Like she was so emphatic. She was so done, so frustrated with, and I think what was interesting is she articulated her frustration. It's like she listed out what were the reasons. And it was pretty illuminating. And I think seeing other people's comments on it was also illuminating. I don't know that I share exactly that experience, but I certainly understood where she was coming from.
Can you summarize the post?
Yeah, you bet. Do you want to lean in, Laura, and summarize?
The gist of it was basically that she's been under pressure, that the pressure coming on the marketing department on her role has been increasing, and that it's unsustainable, that she can't meet, that it's not a human expectation. Like I'm not articulating this well, but like it's not an appropriate expectation that she should meet the requirements that are being put on her. Is that a fair statement, Amanda? Like that's the shortest summary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, those comments have been echoed elsewhere. I think one of the things that we're seeing is she was talking about some of the other things that she's seen, particularly as a female marketing leader, and the tone and the ways that women are engaged as marketing leaders. I mean, I think my favorite is just make it pretty. As a marketing leader, your job is just make it pretty. And it's very diminutive, and you probably don't have that happening to male leaders, but maybe so. But I think the tone that we're seeing is there's a lot of rapid transformation and in our space, and the marketing role becomes very transactional, and we are expected to do our job. When the strategy changes, we're kind of pushed out and the next leader is brought in. And so there's a different expectation within marketing, than maybe in some other functions.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting is, we've all had the experience of explaining a principle to somebody. Well, the reason we care about SEO is this, or the reason we care about the consistency of our brand is this, or we are the precursor to revenue, and here's why I care what happens at the end. Did that thing we created result in revenue? And so depending on your leaders, your leadership team, you will be in some sort of education mode a lot. And I found that initially off-putting, and then I now know it's my opportunity to teach. But I understand it gets tiring. And one of the things I read in that sort of encapsulated post of like, I'm out, were the sense of, yes, sometimes you're educating all the time and it's really exhausting. And I found that really, first of all, super relevant. We've all had to do that in some form or fashion. And then, you decide where do I want to spend my energy? And sometimes that is the energy. And other times you're in a place where that's valued, where your expertise is, okay, I understand, why, and here's what, and I'll trust you now. It's an interesting challenge I think we've all touched on at some point.
Well, and it's that idea of like, I'm focused on education rather than actually marketing and my job.
Yeah, and it is building credibility, right? You have to say, look, this is why I believe this, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and I would tell you that, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes you're in a dialogue where the person really appreciates, oh, okay, they are an expert. Or sometimes it's combative, and they say, look, I still want to Google my name and see why I'm not number one.
I think that often I think people who have gotten to the level of a leadership position in an organization, in a healthcare organization, they have experienced marketing in various forms over the years, and there's a sense of knowledge and ownership themselves. So I think one of the challenges I have experienced working with different clients in that role is that the team that I'm working with from the leadership have so much knowledge themselves about marketing that it's really hard to look to you as the expert, that there's so much internal knowledge. And so you're educating about your field to somebody who probably thinks they already know it. And I think that's a little bit of a battle.
So I'm going to take the counter argument here, because I do believe that as an executive, it's part of our role to own the education piece, right? And help bring people along on the journey that we're taking them on. And that is just part of that executive role. I think what's tough about, and to Julia's point, what's tough about it is when you feel like you're constantly being beaten down when you're trying to bring people along. I think that gets exhausting. But I think that there's a part of that education piece in which, like, us as executives, yes, we've been doing this for a while. Yes, like, we may know better than the CEO who doesn't have the marketing background, but let's put our ego aside and let's perhaps listen. And I think there's like this mutual effort in which we both have to kind of come together in. But, I'll caveat that with what I said before, where it gets harder when you feel like you're constantly being put down when you're trying to bring people along. So I don't know, it's a 50-50, it's a give and take.
Well, I think what's interesting about our role as marketers as well across the leadership team is that at least I feel that I'm an artist. I'm an artist who is also responsible for business results. And so if there's not alignment between the CMO and the CEO or others across the leadership team on the brand, which is visuals and storytelling at the end of the day and how that shows up, like, you really need that alignment and that buy-in across the leadership team to say, the CMO is this artist. We are going to buy into their vision or support that vision or give feedback to that vision and sort of let that person paint the canvas of this brand or of the story, the market narrative, or of how the CEO and other executives are going to show up in the market. And so again, if there's not a really trusted relationship there or someone who believes in me and my artistic vision, it's probably not going to work very well. I'm going to feel very burnt out because as an artist and as a creative who has to drive a creative team to business results, it's like real tough to have someone second guessing my work and my artistic sort of vision for the program. And I'm accountable for those results. So if I'm not hitting results, like my bad, I shouldn't be there, potentially. But like, that's where you really need to pick as a marketer, the right company and the right relationship with the CEO. And same with the CEO needs to pick the right marketer or CMO that you guys can get along well. And like, you trust the vision or what the roles are of like, who owns the brand? Is it the CMO? Is it the CEO? Is it the board? Who owns the brand? You got to make that clear. If I don't own the brand in a company, I'm probably not going to take that job because that's something that is really important to me as a professional. So it's something that stands out when, if you're feeling burnt out, there's probably a lot of reasons for that, but that would be a big one for me.
Yeah. And I'm also going to be provocative and say, if the board owns the brand, you should probably just run away. That's like a huge red flag. Just run in the other direction.
Warning.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I heard that I read as I was looking through this post that I thought was interesting was like not delegating the marketing work and the strategy to the marketing leader and their team, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen that happen. It's like messaging gets somehow diverted off to a leader in another department. And I think to your point, Bethany, right? Like that's not owning that story. That's not owning the brand. If you're changing your messaging, that should be sitting like fundamentally in the marketing function. And if it's not, then there probably needs to be a broader conversation. I mean, I'll be the first one to say, like, that's happened to me. I've been in that, and I've had to have the conversation with the CEO. Like, what's happening here? Like, why is this individual holding this right now versus me? And we should probably really rethink that.
Okay, I see a whole nother episode on owning the brand story and what that looks like in a successful organization. I'm not kidding. I think that's such a great point. Like how that works, how that can function successfully. Mm-hmm. Really good one. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So maybe let's shift gears. Gut check. Are you feeling this? How are you staying sane? Is that something that any of you are feeling? And that challenge? I mean, clearly there's that question, Bethany, the comment that you made about like, you need to find the right leader, the right team. Is that maybe it's not something you're facing right now, but maybe it's something you have faced. And then I think let's address that. And then let's talk about like, how can leaders and organizations make sure that our teams your marketing leader and their team is set up for success?
Well, I'm in a different position a little bit. But I will say, I'll pass this to you, Nisha, in a second. I will say that the organizations that we work with, I don't see quite what she was experiencing. What I do recognize, and I think Nisha's point about education is really true, is it's our job to continuously educate, and that can sometimes feel frustrating because education about marketing is kind of it's a slow, gradual learning, I guess. But I haven't seen exactly what she's talking about, but I do understand some of the frustration she's articulating. But I'm in a different vantage point as an agency versus in a CMO role. Nisha, to you.
Thanks, Laura. So, me personally, so one of the reasons why I'm in my particular role right now, which is beyond just marketing, so more of a product strategy, go-to-market role, is because I was feeling like there was only so much I could give to just being a marketing executive, where it was starting to get monotonous and I was starting to feel stagnant. Because yes, when you aren't in the right environment and you don't feel empowered as a marketing executive to make the right decisions, you start to doubt yourself. You start to feel like, to Bethany's point, like you start to doubt your creative talent. You start to doubt your your copywriting chops. Like it all starts to go downhill. And so that's where now my day-to-day function isn't exactly just owning marketing. It's kind of owning the entire strategy, but like there are days that I miss it, right? There are days that I get, I've missed writing copy for landing pages. I missed, drawing out multi-channel campaigns. But I do think that I specifically was feeling something along those lanes, and it was because I didn't feel supported.
I have one on this, and here's the thing. I've just been, making note because I've been in private equity backed companies as a CMO for 7 years. And when I say that, it feels very funny to say, but I've had a couple of different experiences, and I have recognized the burnout that the writer described, and that maybe all of us have noticed. And I heard a story from a CMO who was more experienced than me, and she said, yeah, this guy came to me and was like, I'm a new CMO, and all I do is walk around polishing things all day. I'm like, here, and I'm here, and I'm here. And she's like, yeah, guy, that's it. And I thought it was such a dry, funny story, but I recognize it. Like, we do need to be octopi, arms, and we do need to do all the things. And yet, the more we build our teams and trust each other, it helps. So I have been in a place where I realized this was not a match for me. And I am now in a place that is such an incredible match for me at my stage and my growth. And I feel inspired and excited every single day. And yet I have also been the person who's like, is this my last CMO job? I can't do this another few years. So I've been there in the last 7 years. And then I'm now in a place where I'm like, yes, this is exactly where I need to be. And I think my TLDR is you need to know your match. And so if at any point in your exploration with a company or a CEO or a leadership team, you're like, that doesn't make sense, or I don't feel that, you can articulate it and they might give you the why. You can opt out, but I think it's important to state, this is what's great for me. And my deep spikes are A and B. And if you need someone who does C and D, I'll build that team around me. But my pros are A and B, and if you need A and B, I'm right here. And I'll build the C and D to help us have a fabulous team. I just found that you've got to know what's right for you and choose accordingly.
I love hearing that, I have to say, because my gut when I read that post was I'm super empathetic. I get where she was coming from, but I also heard from her that it's like that everywhere. And I think it's not. And I think it's refreshing to hear it's not like that everywhere. And you really do have to find the right company fit.
And that's sometimes easier said than done. I mean, I think
way
process, right? Like, the grass is always greener and sometimes it's really not. And I think obviously in that interview process, it really is a two-way street, and you've got to do as much due diligence as you can. Do the backdoor references on the exec team, right? Like go and find out as much information as you can about the organization in direct conversation and behind the scenes. And that's really important. And you're not always going to get all the insight before you get in the door. And it's going to be a little bit of, uncovering, peeling back the onion. And hopefully it's not an onion, it's a peony. I don't know. Right? Love me some peonies. Definitely peony season. So I'm here for it.
I think another thing that can contribute to burnout for teams is the remote culture that we're all experiencing right now. And again, I go back to have heavy influence on the creative team side, where it's like creative teams vibe. There's like a creative process that is very much different in person than it is remotely. So it's hard to do your work the same way in a remote setting or over Zoom or staring at people in little boxes or at different times of the day than versus like sessions that should be together with a whiteboard or literally at an art museum. So, like things like that are inspiring to teams. I think I do get burned out if I'm not fed in that way. And I think my teams need to be fed in that way as well. So in a remote world, I have to work extra hard. Right now, I have a team that is partially in the office. It's a hybrid situation, but we're in the office but across a couple of countries. So I've got teams in different places, and I'm trying to figure out how to get everybody to work well together and find the vibe that we need to do the creative process and create experiences that resonate with our buyers and get out and sort of experience lives outside of the Zoom screen and create creative elements outside of the Zoom screen. So I work really hard to keep that going for my teams. Like we have once every 2 months, we go on field trips to art museums or poetry slams or like different things that help us create stories and create visuals and experience different things. Once a week, we literally have a session that is all around creative best practices that we're seeing in other companies.
I love that.
Healthcare could really use that, right? Like I think in some like consumer industries, retail, beverage, like you're seeing a lot of these creative elements being pushed forward. We don't get as much of that in healthcare. There's not an expectation, and there's not a priority put on that necessarily. And there's not even tolerance for the time that takes, adding that to your creative process. But I think we would be better off if more people put a priority on that.
Well, and I would say there's not an expectation maybe internal to an organization. I think there is an expectation from the consumer. They're like the consumer doesn't suddenly change who they are and how they feel when they see great marketing and ads and when they suddenly start looking at healthcare. And I think that's why we've seen such a massive shift in terms of the kinds of organizations that are emerging, right? So I love that. That's fantastic. Maybe I want to come on one of your field trips with you. I'm totally here for that. I'll just pop on over to New York. Just had a friend in town from New York yesterday, and I was feeling all the feels. So I'm coming. Field trip.
I love a
Maybe
field
we
trip.
Should all make a field trip to New York and hang with Bethany. Great. Okay, so let's pivot. What are 1 to 2 things that you would recommend to organizations, CEOs, boards, investors, exec teams that they can do to take care of their marketing professionals and keep them sane? And I think I've heard some smatterings of that, but maybe we can just kind of bring all of that together and give some direction.
So I have one. I think, and this is coming from personal experience. So this is me saying, if I could write a love letter to a CEO, it would start something like, "Dear CEO, please give me an example of what you think success looks like, and then be incredibly consistent throughout the year and communicate proactively when the goalposts are changing so that I don't feel whiplashed when they do. Love forever, Nisha."
Beautiful.
I love it.
XO.
I love it. I wish you could see the hearts emoji.
Yes, pop.
It's right. Like, it is a relationship, and I have found if you can find the right person with whom to be vulnerable, your CEO, your peer, it's so powerful. And like, I've had to say some hard things to like awesome leaders, and when they give it right back in like a growth way, like it's so exciting. And sorry, I'm just gonna like the heart emojis are continuing to outflow, but you're exactly right, Nisha. That is the love letter you need.
And I'm going to be cheesy and hark back to season 1 and the podcast we did on metrics that matter, because I really think that it's about communication. And I think knowing, when you talk, Nisha, in your love letter, a subtext to that could be, let's look at the same data and agree what the data means. So when you talk about success, let's be specific, let's be data driven, and let's all agree what we're looking at and how we get there. So communication.
Yeah, I second the metrics piece. I mean, I think I've had the best situations, and it's not always, a CEO has a very tough job, right? Like, there's so much that person has to be doing. And so I get that. And I don't even know if it's a job I would want, right? Like, or be good at in any way, shape, or form. And so I'm here to try to support that person and give them the platform they need, and also the brand that is going to work in the market and resonate with buyers and close deals, help the sales team close deals. And so there's a lot that I'm thinking about. And I think the communication and the metrics, I do have to second that of are we aligned? And if something isn't working, let's talk about options for what can be done differently, and sort of the quick wins versus the longer term investments that are also important, because brand sometimes is this nebulous longer term investment. And so are we aligned with what that should look like versus the quick wins that you might get through a digital marketing campaign that are going to be driving people to click on different things or request demos potentially, and those kinds of things. So I think as marketers, we also have to be clear communicators, understand our strengths and weaknesses, and also that of the CEO and what's top of mind for them. Every week when I talk to a CEO, I'm understanding to the best of my ability what he or she is going through on that given week, and what are things that are top of mind, and that I respond to the things that are most important to them first. And then I get to the fun stuff that I think is great, that's maybe secondary. But I think that alignment of we need to respond to what the CEO needs as well is pretty important.
That's a really good call out.
I think that's fantastic.
Actually, going way old school here, you guys. Back early on in my career, somebody taught me to manage your manager. Best advice. Yes. Absolute best advice. Manage your manager. Manage up. So what do they need? What are they worried about? And how can you orient around that, Bethany? I think that's a really good point.
100%. We're hiring someone, and we were torn between two very good candidates. And I asked the person who will be the manager of the new person. I said, okay, who might make your life easier? Who's going to take things off your plate? Who's going to be the one that you go to and they can solve a problem when things go down, as they do? And that was helpful as we thought about it. And she's like, oh yeah, because she's a super strong IC, now managing among, in her first, say, 2 to 3 years of managing, coming to it like a duck to water. But at the same time, you have to think about, how do I build the team around me, and how will they help me be better as a manager? And so it was really kind of fun to think about it that way. Who's going to help you solve problems? Who's going to help you when things go wrong? And that was defining for us.
That's a great point. I love that. That's a good frame up.
So critical. Absolutely. I think there are a couple of other things that I heard. One of them was, first of all, and I think we all expect this, but making sure that marketing has a seat at the table, that we're included in those conversations. If marketing's not in the conversations, we can't play the role that's going to make us most effective in supporting the organization and supporting growth. So I think that was one that I heard and saw, and I think we've talked about before. And then I think the other one, and I think this goes back to what I heard from a lot of you, was really this idea of approaching marketing and the work that we're doing with curiosity versus telling us what to do, right? I think there have been so many instances you just need to do this, or we just need this. And it's tell us about what the issue is, and then allow us to use our creativity and, all of our full skill set, our toolkit, to really support you in finding the best solution. And I think the opportunities, I've had those situations where, hey, we should do this. And I've taken a moment and a pause, thought about it, come back with a very different solution, said, hey, here's why I'm thinking about this differently. And had a CEO be very grateful and appreciative that, I did take the effort to not just be an order taker. I mean, that's not our job, is not to be an order taker. It's to really be creative and a strategic thought partner to the executive team, and giving the space to be able to do that, I think allows marketers to shine and have their best moments. Wow.
I love that. I can't tell you how many times somebody comes to me and says, we need a press release about this thing. And I'm like, do we though? Is that what we need? Or are there 8 other things we could do that actually get you closer to the goal that you're trying to achieve? And so it's that negotiation or the talk of like, what's the actual result we're trying to get to here? Because like not everything's newsworthy and not everything deserves a press release. And there's like so many other tools that we can use or deploy to hit a given set of results. So I love that.
So I'll echo that. And you know what's interesting about this particular piece is in product management, there's usually when you are trying to solve for a particular feature or functionality, the product manager will say, tell me the problem that you want to solve, that this user is trying to solve. And that's how they write their user requirements. It's done through the problem that is trying to be solved. And that's how they come about it. And they've developed like a workflow and a way in which like a rigor around how to write requirements, how to approach it from a problem solution type of perspective. And any good product manager, if you come to a product manager and you say, well, the client is asking for X, Y, and Z, they usually ask you, well, what are they trying to solve?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's interesting because from a marketing perspective, like we don't necessarily have rigor around that. Like we just, you know, a CEO or somebody or a salesperson will come to us and say, we need an asset about this, or I need a new slide about blah, 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 or this landing page, you know, copy sucks, or whatever it is. They just have critique and they have a way to solve for it, right? Or I need a press release. But we don't think about it in the same way that our counterparts do, which is just so interesting to me, like now that we're saying it out loud.
Well, it's interesting because I think that my natural orientation is to go back to first principles of what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And I have said that to so many people I can't even count. But I think that you're right, that expectation and that rigor around the function and that being the orientation is not necessarily one that is expected and understood by other functions coming to marketing in the same way that they might come to product.
Yeah. What's the objective? What's the goal? Totally agree with your first principles observation.
Yeah. Awesome. This has been a fun and fabulous conversation. And hopefully we are spreading the love to the marketers out there and building, because there's a lot of love here. But I think really our goal here really is to make sure that we've got successful organizations. And I think having happy and effective and successful marketers is going to help empower an organization to do its best work. And I think that's what we're looking for here. So thanks, everybody. Great.
All is not lost. It's okay.
All is not lost. Hang in there.
Keep the faith. It's out there.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, y'all.
That's a wrap for this episode of CMO's Off Script. This podcast was made possible by Breezy Hill Marketing. Don't forget to explore the podcast notes or cmosoffscript.com for additional insights and resources. Until next time, be bold and stay curious.